Zara pressed her scaled face against the cold metal of the observation deck, watching the stars blur past as their ship traveled through hyperspace. The young Cytherian had heard the story since she was a hatchling. Humans were monsters from the outer rim, creatures of violence and death who consumed entire worlds. Her grandmother's tale still echoed in her mind during the long nights aboard the transport vessel. The emergency sirens suddenly pierced the silence. Red lights bathed the corridors as Captain Voss's voice crackled through the speakers. Pirates had found them. The notorious Black Fang Consortium, known for taking prisoners and selling them in the illegal markets of Theta Station. Zara's heart pounded as she scrambled toward the escape pods with dozens of other passengers. The ship shuddered violently. Through the viewport, she could see the sleek black vessels of the pirates closing in, their weapons charging with deadly orange light. The transport had no weapons, no shields strong enough to withstand an assault. "They were merchants and travelers, not warriors. Move faster," shouted a Valkyrian businessman, his forearms flailing as he pushed past elderly passengers. Panic filled the air like smoke. Children cried out for their parents while adults fought desperately to reach safety. The escape pods would only hold so many. Another impact rocked the ship. Zara stumbled and fell, her small frame no match for the larger aliens rushing past her. A Draknari soldier stepped on her tail, sending waves of pain up her spine. She tried to get up but was knocked down again by fleeing passengers. The corridor began to fill with smoke as fires broke out in the lower decks. The pirates had breached the hull. Zara could hear their heavy footsteps echoing through the ship's corridors, along with the terrified screams of those who couldn't escape. The stories were true after all. These creatures showed no mercy, took what they wanted, and left destruction in their wake. She crawled behind a support beam, trying to make herself invisible. Her translator device had been damaged in the fall, so she could only understand fragments of what the pirates were shouting. Their language was harsh and filled with sounds that made her scales stand on end. Through a crack in the beam, she watched as a group of Black Fang pirates herded captured passengers into the cargo bay. Their leader was a massive Gorthak with cybernetic implants covering half his face. He laughed as his crew sorted through their prisoners, deciding who was valuable enough to keep alive. The ship's main power failed. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the walls as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Zara felt her stomach lurch as the transport began to spin slowly through space. The pirates had what they came for. Soon they would destroy what remained of the ship to cover their tracks. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the ancient spirits of her world. Her family would never know what happened to her. The merchant vessel she had boarded at Kepler Station was supposed to be safe passage to the inner colonies where she planned to study xenobiology. Instead, she would die alone in the darkness of space. A new sound filled the corridor. It wasn't the heavy boots of the pirates or the screams of the captured. It was something else entirely. A rhythmic tapping, almost like music. Zara opened her eyes and peered around the beam. A figure moved through the smoke with impossible grace. At first, she thought it might be another passenger who had escaped the pirates, but as the shape came closer, she realized it was something far more dangerous. The creature stood upright on two legs, had smooth skin instead of scales or fur, and moved with a predatory confidence that made her blood freeze. It was a human. The legends had spoken of their kind for generations. Monsters who conquered worlds and enslaved entire species, being so violent that even the Galactic Council feared to mention their name in official documents. They came from a death world called Earth, where everything tried to kill everything else, creating the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. But this human wasn't attacking anyone. Instead, it moved carefully through the wreckage, checking on injured passengers and helping them to safety. When it found a wounded Altarian child trapped under debris, the human gently lifted the heavy metal beams with its bare hands. The child's parent wept with gratitude as the human carried the little one to a secure area. Zara watched in confusion as the human continued its rescue efforts. Where were the claws and fangs the stories described? Why wasn't it killing everyone in sight? This creature seemed to be helping the very people it should have been hunting. The sound of approaching pirates made the human freeze. It looked around quickly, then spotted Zara hiding behind the beam. For a moment, their eyes met across the smoky corridor. The human's face was strange and alien, but there was something in its expression that Zara had never expected to see. The human raised one finger to its lips in what she somehow understood was a gesture for silence. Then it pointed toward an escape pod that the pirates hadn't discovered yet. The human was trying to help her escape. Heavy footsteps echoed closer. The human turned to face the approaching danger, pulling out a weapon that looked like nothing Zara had ever seen before. It moved to block the corridor, positioning itself between the pirates and the hidden civilians. "Well, well," growled a pirate's voice in the distance. "Looks like we found ourselves a lost little human." The human didn't respond with words. Instead, it did something that changed everything Zara thought she knew about these legendary monsters. The corners of its mouth curved upward in what she would later learn was called a smile. But this wasn't an expression of happiness or joy. It was the smile of a predator who had found worthy prey. The human's weapon made no sound when it fired. Zara watched through the crack in the support beam as bolts of blue energy struck the first pirate with surgical precision. The massive Draknari warrior dropped to the deck without even crying out. His neural system shut down instantly by whatever technology the human carried. "Impossible," snarled the Gorthak leader as he rounded the corner with 5 more pirates. "Humans don't use stun weapons. They prefer to paint the walls with blood." The human still didn't speak. It moved like liquid shadow, ducking behind cover as plasma bolts sizzled through the air where it had been standing. Zara had never seen anything move so fast. The human seemed to flow around the pirates' attacks, always one step ahead of their targeting systems. A Black Fang mercenary tried to flank the human from a side corridor. The human spun and fired without even looking, the energy bolt catching the pirate center mass. The mercenary collapsed, alive but unconscious. Every shot the human took was carefully aimed to disable, not to kill. What kind of human fights to save prisoners instead of claiming them? Demanded the Gorthak captain. His cybernetic eye glowed red as he analyzed the situation. "This makes no sense according to our intelligence reports." The human finally spoke, its voice calm and steady despite the chaos around them. "Your intelligence reports are wrong about a lot of things." Zara's translator was still damaged, but somehow she could understand the human's words. There was something about the way it spoke that cut through the static and reached her directly. The voice carried no rage or bloodlust, only a quiet determination that was somehow more frightening than any roar of anger. 2 pirates rushed the human's position from opposite sides. The human dropped its weapon and drew a pair of smaller devices from its belt. The tools looked harmless, almost like medical instruments. But when the human activated them, they hummed with deadly energy. The first pirate swung a massive vibroblade at the human's head. The human ducked under the strike and touched one of its devices to the pirate's armor. Electricity crackled across the metal plating, and the pirate convulsed before falling unconscious. The second attacker fired a shotgun blast that should have torn the human apart, but the creature had already moved, rolling behind a bulkhead and emerging to disable its opponent with the same methodical precision. "Enough games," growled the Gorthak captain. He pulled out a thermal detonator, its red surface pulsing with contained energy. "One more step and I blow this entire section. Everyone dies, including your precious cargo." The human froze, its strange weapon still humming in its hands. "You'd kill your own crew just to stop me?" "Black Fang pirates are expendable," the captain laughed. "But the bounty on a live human is worth more than this entire shipment. The hegemony pays very well for specimens from Earth." Zara saw the human's expression change. The calm mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that made her scales stand on end. It wasn't anger or fear. It was the look of a creature that had just been reminded why it chose to be gentle in the first place. "You want to know what humans are really like?" the human asked softly. "You want to see the monsters from your nightmares?" The captain's cybernetic eye flickered uncertainly. Something in the human's tone had changed. The other pirates took unconscious steps backward, their weapons trembling in their hands. Even though the human hadn't moved or raised its voice, every predator instinct they possessed was screaming warnings. "We learned to be gentle," the human continued, "because we're very, very good at being the opposite." The lights went out. In the darkness, Zara heard sounds that would haunt her dreams for years to come. Not the sounds of violence or brutality, but something far more unsettling. The human moved through the blackness like it belonged there, and the pirates' weapons fired wildly at shadows and empty air. One by one, their weapons fell silent as their owners collapsed. When the emergency lighting flickered back on, the human stood alone among the unconscious pirates. The thermal detonator lay safely deactivated at its feet. Not a single drop of blood had been spilled. but somehow the corridor felt like a battlefield where an army had been defeated by a single soldier. The human looked around at the fallen pirates, then knelt beside the Gorthak captain. It checked the alien's pulse with gentle fingers, ensuring he was alive and uninjured. The same hands that had disabled 6 armed warriors in complete darkness now moved with the care of a healer. Medical attention needed in Corridor 7. The human spoke into a communication device. 6 unconscious subjects requiring neural dampener monitoring. Zara realized that other humans had been aboard the ship all along. A rescue team, perhaps, or passengers who had hidden during the initial attack. She heard voices responding to the human's call, coordinating medical aid and evacuation procedures. They spoke to each other with warmth and humor, like any group of people working together toward a common goal. The human who had saved them walked over to where Zara was hiding. It knelt down and extended one hand toward her, palm open and empty of weapons. The gesture was universal among spacefaring species, a sign of peaceful intent. "It's safe now," the human said gently. "My name is Marcus. What's yours?" Zara stared at the offered hand. This close, she could see that the human's skin was scarred in places, evidence of old battles and hard-won experience. But the eyes looking at her held no malice, no hunger for conquest or destruction. They were tired eyes, the eyes of someone who had seen too much violence and chose compassion instead. "Zara," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. Marcus smiled again, but this time it was completely different from the expression that had terrified the pirates. This smile was warm and reassuring, the kind that made small children stop crying and made frightened adults feel safe. It transformed his entire face, erasing the predatory stillness and replacing it with something unmistakably kind. "Well, Zara, would you like to help me check on the other passengers? I think they could use a friendly face right about now." Zara hesitantly took Marcus's hand, surprised by its warmth and the gentleness of his grip. Together, they walked through the damaged corridors where other humans worked efficiently to restore order to the chaos. She watched in fascination as they moved with purpose and coordination, their actions speaking of long practice and mutual trust. A human woman with short silver hair was treating injured passengers with medical equipment that looked far more advanced than anything Zara had seen in the outer colonies. She worked on a Velcarian merchant whose arm had been broken during the pirate attack, her movements precise and careful as she set the bone and applied a regeneration field. "Thank you, Dr. Chen," the merchant said through his translator. "I was told humans only knew how to cause pain, not heal it." Dr. Chen looked up from her work, her brown eyes reflecting sadness. "Most species in this galaxy have only heard the propaganda version of our history. The hegemony makes sure of that." Another human, a tall man with dark skin and graying temples, was working to restore the ship's navigation systems. His fingers danced across holographic displays with the skill of someone who understood technology at a fundamental level. Sparks flew from damaged circuits as he rewired critical systems, but he worked without protection, trusting his knowledge to keep him safe. "Captain Torres," Marcus called out to him. "How long until we can reach a safe port?" 6 hours to the nearest Federation station," Torres replied without looking up from his work. "The pirates damaged our hyperspace motivator, but I can get us there on sublight engines. The Blackfang crew will need proper medical facilities anyway." Zara noticed that he spoke about the pirates with the same concern he showed for the legitimate passengers. These humans seemed incapable of leaving anyone to suffer, even those who had tried to harm them. It contradicted everything she had been taught about their species. As they continued through the ship, Zara saw more evidence of human efficiency and compassion. They had organized the other passengers into groups, providing food, water, and medical attention to anyone who needed it. Children who had been crying in terror now laughed as a young human man performed simple magic tricks with tools from his engineering kit. "Why don't they fear you?" Zara asked Marcus as they watched the entertainment. "The other species, I mean. They should be running away or trying to fight you." Marcus considered her question carefully before answering. "Because they can see what we choose to be, rather than what we're capable of being. Fear and respect are different things, Zara. Fear makes people do desperate things. Respect makes them want to work together." They entered the ship's main lounge, where Captain Torres had called a meeting of all the passengers. Representatives from a dozen different species filled the converted space, their varied forms creating a living rainbow of galactic diversity. Humans moved among them, offering translation assistance and answering questions with patience and clarity. "Ladies, Gentlemen and esteemed beings, Torres began, his voice carrying easily across the room. I know this has been a traumatic experience for everyone. The Black Fang Consortium attacked your vessel with the intent to capture and sell you into slavery. My crew and I were fortunate to be aboard when this happened. A Draknari diplomat raised one of his forearms. Captain Torres, forgive my directness, but we must ask. The stories we have heard about humans suggest you would have taken advantage of this situation for your own benefit. Why did you choose to help us instead? Torres smiled, and Zara saw the same transformation that had occurred with Marcus. The expression erased years from his face and made him look almost grandfatherly, because that's what people do for each other. You help when you can, you protect those who can't protect themselves, and you try to leave things better than you found them. An elderly Altarian female leaned forward in her mobility chair. But the hegemony broadcasts warn us that humans are warlike and dangerous. They say your species has never known peace. The hegemony says many things, Dr. Chen interjected, most of them designed to keep other species from learning the truth about what happened during the contact wars. The room fell silent. Even Zara knew about the contact wars, the brutal conflict that had raged across the galaxy 3 centuries ago. According to the official histories, humans had attempted to conquer every species they encountered, leaving devastation in their wake until the combined forces of the galactic hegemony finally drove them back to their home system. The truth, Torres continued, is that we never wanted war with anyone. When we first reached the stars and encountered other civilizations, we came in peace. We brought offers of trade, cultural exchange, and mutual cooperation. We were naive enough to believe that intelligence naturally led to wisdom. Marcus moved to stand beside his captain. The hegemony had different ideas. They had spent millennia maintaining their power through careful control of resources and information. The arrival of a new species, especially one with our particular talents, threatened their entire system. So they declared war on us? Asked the Draknari diplomat. They declared us a threat to galactic peace, Torres replied. They spread stories about human aggression and expansion plans. They convinced dozens of species that we were monsters who had to be contained or destroyed. And when we tried to defend ourselves, they pointed to our military capabilities as proof of their claims. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing star charts from the Contact Wars era. Red zones marked areas of conflict, while blue regions indicated human colonies and trading posts. Zara was surprised to see how small the human presence had been, compared to the vast territories controlled by hegemony species. We were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, Chen explained. Our choice was simple, fight back or accept genocide. We chose to survive, but we also chose to fight in a way that proved we weren't the monsters they claimed we were. What do you mean? Zara found herself asking. Marcus knelt down to meet her eyes directly. We could have won the contact wars, Zara. Human military doctrine is designed around total victory against any opponent. But total victory would have meant destroying entire worlds and wiping out billions of innocent people. So instead, we fought just hard enough to make the hegemony realize that conquest would cost them more than they were willing to pay. The room was completely silent now. Passengers who had lived their entire lives believing one version of history were hearing another for the first time. The implications were staggering. You let them win? Whispered the Altarian elder. We chose exile over extermination, Torres said simply. The treaty signed at the end of the war established our current borders and forbade us from expanding beyond our home system. In exchange, the hegemony agreed to leave Earth alone and allow limited trade through neutral stations. Zara felt her understanding of the galaxy shifting beneath her feet. If the humans were telling the truth, then everything she had been taught was a lie designed to maintain hegemony power. But if they were lying, then this was exactly the kind of deception that monsters would use to gain trust before attacking. The Federation station appeared on the main view screen like a jewel against the stars. New Geneva was one of the few neutral ports where humans were allowed to dock and trade with other species. Zara pressed her face to the observation window, watching as dozens of ships from across the galaxy moved in carefully choreographed patterns around the massive structure. Beautiful, isn't it? Marcus said, joining her at the window. One of the few places in the galaxy where everyone gets along, at least officially. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything Zara had seen in the outer colonies. Multiple docking rings rotated slowly around a central hub, each designed to accommodate different atmospheric and gravitational requirements. Ships that could never land on the same world docked side by side in perfect harmony. Captain Torres's voice echoed through the transport ship's communication system. All passengers will be docking in 20 minutes. Federation medical teams are standing by to assist anyone who needs treatment. Immigration officers will process your travel documents and arrange transportation to your final destinations. As their ship approached the docking bay, Zara saw something that made her scales stand on end. A massive hegemony battlecruiser was moored at one of the military berths, its dark hull bristling with weapons designed to crack planets in half. The sight of it sent waves of fear through the passenger compartments. "Don't worry," Marcus said, noticing her reaction. "New Geneva has been neutral territory for over a century. The hegemony can't touch us here, and they know it." "But what if they try?" Zara asked. "What if they decide the treaty doesn't matter anymore?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression growing distant. "Then they would learn why their ancestors were so afraid of us in the first place." The docking procedure was smooth and efficient. Federation personnel boarded the ship immediately, providing medical assistance and coordinating with the human crew to ensure everyone's needs were met. Zara watched as the unconscious pirates were transferred to medical stretchers and taken to the station's detention facility. Even they would receive proper medical care and legal representation. As the passengers disembarked, many stopped to thank the humans who had saved them. The Dreknari diplomat pressed a datapad into Captain Torres's hands, explaining that it contained trade agreements his government wanted to discuss. The Altarian elder gave Dr. Chen a small crystal pendant, a traditional blessing for those who heal others. "You have changed everything I thought I knew about your species," the elderly alien told Chen. "When I return home, I will tell my people the truth about humans." Chen accepted the pendant with obvious emotion. "Thank you. That means more to us than you know." Zara hung back as the other passengers filed off the ship. She wasn't sure why, but she felt reluctant to leave these humans behind. In the space of a few hours, they had completely upended her understanding of the galaxy. Everything she thought she knew about monsters and heroes had been turned upside down. "Having second thoughts about something?" Marcus asked, approaching her with that now familiar gentle smile. "I don't know where to go," Zara admitted. "I was traveling to the inner colonies to study xenobiology, but now I'm not sure I want to anymore. If the universities there teach lies about humans, what other lies are they teaching?" Marcus exchanged a look with Captain Torres, who had been listening nearby. The older human nodded as if they were having an entire conversation without words. "How would you feel about coming with us?" Torres asked. "We're heading back to the Sol system, and we could use someone with your background. The xenobiology department at Luna University is always looking for bright students, and they have a strict policy of teaching actual facts instead of propaganda." Zara felt her heart skip several beats. "You're inviting me to Earth? But I thought humans weren't allowed to bring outsiders into your territory." "The treaty has some exceptions," Dr. Chen explained, joining their conversation. "Students, researchers, and refugees can apply for special visas. Given what you've been through, I think you qualify on multiple counts." The idea was terrifying and exciting at the same time. Earth was the legendary death world where humans had evolved, a place of such danger that it had created the most formidable species in the galaxy. But it was also the home of people like Marcus and Torres, who chose kindness over conquest and healing over harm. "I would need to contact my family," Zara said slowly. "They would worry if I just disappeared." "Of course," Torres replied. "We can arrange secure communications from the ship. And if you decide you want to go home at any point, we'll make sure you get there safely." As they talked, Zara noticed a group of hegemony officials approaching their docking bay. They wore the distinctive purple uniforms of the Intelligence Division, the organization responsible for monitoring and reporting on human activities. Their leader was a tall, thin Valorian with the cold eyes of someone who had spent too many years watching others. "Captain Torres," the Valorian said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "I am Intelligence Director Koss. We need to discuss the incident with the Black Fang pirates." Torres straightened, and Zara saw the relaxed ship captain transform into something harder and more formal. "Director Koss, I assume you want our report on the rescue operation." "Among other things," Koss replied, his gaze shifting to the other humans. "We're particularly interested in your methods. Our sources indicate that 6 armed pirates were subdued without a single fatality. This is unusual for humans. Marcus stepped forward, his own expression becoming carefully neutral. We use non-lethal weapons and standard restraint techniques. Nothing that violates Federation regulations or treaty agreements. Koss smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Of course not. Still, the Hegemony Council finds it curious that humans would go to such lengths to preserve the lives of criminals. It raises questions about your true motivations. Our motivations are simple, Dr. Chen said firmly. We help people who need help. We protect those who can't protect themselves. And we try to make sure everyone goes home safe. The intelligence director laughed, a sound like breaking glass. How wonderfully naive. The council will be fascinated to hear about this new human strategy. Conquest through compassion, perhaps? Very clever. Zara felt anger burning in her chest. These hegemony officials were trying to twist the humans' good deeds into something sinister. They couldn't accept that anyone might choose to help others without seeking some advantage in return. Excuse me, she said, her voice stronger than she expected. I was there during the attack. I saw what these humans did, and I saw why they did it. They saved lives because saving lives was the right thing to do. If that threatens you, maybe you should ask yourself why. Director Koss turned his cold stare toward her, and Zara felt like she was being examined by a predator. And you are? Zara of the Kytherian Collective, she replied, lifting her chin defiantly. A citizen of the galaxy with the right to speak the truth. Truth is a flexible concept, young Kytherian, Koss said smoothly. It tends to change depending on one's perspective and allegiances. Marcus moved to stand beside Zara, not threateningly, but in a way that made it clear he would protect her if necessary. The truth is that 6 armed pirates are alive and in custody instead of dead on a transport ship floor. The truth is that dozens of innocent passengers are safe with their families instead of being sold into slavery. If those facts threaten the hegemony's version of reality, perhaps it's time for a new reality. Director Koss's expression hardened at Marcus's words, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Director, I believe you have more pressing matters to attend to. A human woman approached their group, wearing the crisp uniform of a Federation diplomat. She was older than the others, with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to handling delicate political situations. Her identification badge marked her as Ambassador Sarah Chen, and Zara realized she must be related to Dr. Chen. Ambassador Chen, Koss said stiffly. I wasn't aware you were on station. I arrived this morning for trade negotiations with the Altarian delegation, Chen replied smoothly. Imagine my surprise when I heard that Hegemony Intelligence was harassing the crew of a rescue vessel. We're simply conducting a routine inquiry into humans acting like decent people? Chen interrupted. How terrifying for you. The tension in the docking bay was thick enough to cut with a vibroblade. Zara could see other passengers and station personnel beginning to gather, drawn by the confrontation. She noticed that several Federation security officers had taken positions near the entrances, their hands resting casually on their weapons. The hegemony has legitimate concerns about human activities, Koss said, his voice rising slightly. Your people have a history of deception and manipulation. Our people have a history of survival, Captain Torres replied calmly, and of helping others survive when we can. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should examine why. Director Koss looked around the growing crowd and seemed to realize that the situation was getting away from him. Several of the rescued passengers had joined the group, including the Draknari diplomat and the Altarian elder. Their presence made it impossible for him to paint the humans as villains without contradicting first-hand witnesses. This conversation is not over, Captain, Koss said finally. The Council will want a full report on your methods and motivations. The report will be filed through proper channels, Ambassador Chen said firmly, along with commendations for the crew's heroic actions. I'm sure the media will be very interested in the story of humans risking their lives to save innocent travelers from pirates. Koss's face darkened at the mention of media coverage. The last thing the hegemony wanted was positive publicity for humans. Their entire power structure depended on other species believing that humans were monsters who needed to be contained. Mark my words, the intelligence director said, pointing at Marcus. Your false compassion will not fool anyone for long. Eventually, your true nature will reveal itself. Marcus stepped forward, and for a moment Zara saw a flash of something dangerous in his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You're right about one thing, Director. Our true nature will reveal itself. But I don't think you're going to like what you find." The intelligence director turned and stalked away, his subordinates hurrying to keep up. The crowd began to disperse, but many of the onlookers lingered to thank the human crew, or simply to get a closer look at the people who had become legends in their own time. "Well, that was unpleasant," Ambassador Chen said once the hegemony officials were gone, "but not unexpected. Intelligence Division has been looking for ways to discredit human rescue operations for months. They're afraid," Dr. Chen observed. "More afraid than they've ever been." "Why?" Zara asked. "What's changed?" Captain Torres smiled, but this time there was something almost sad in his expression. "Word is getting out. Stories like today's are spreading faster than the hegemony can suppress them. Other species are starting to ask questions about the official version of history. And questions lead to answers," Marcus added. "Answers the hegemony doesn't want anyone to know." As they talked, Zara made her decision. She had come this far from everything she had known, and the humans had shown her possibilities she had never imagined. The chance to learn the real truth about the galaxy was worth any risk. "I want to come with you," she said firmly. "To Earth, to Luna University, wherever you think I can learn the most." Ambassador Chen smiled warmly. "I think that can be arranged. Luna University has excellent xenobiology programs, and they're always eager to welcome students from other worlds. Your perspective would be valuable to their research." "What kind of research?" Zara asked. "Understanding," Torres replied. "How different species think, what they value, what they fear. The more we understand each other, the better chance we have of building a galaxy where everyone can live in peace." Dr. Chen nodded agreement. "Most conflicts come from misunderstanding and fear. If we can break down those barriers, we can prevent the kind of tragedies that led to the contact wars." As they prepared to depart New Geneva, Zara sent a long message to her family explaining her decision. She told them about the pirate attack, about the humans who had saved her, and about the opportunity to study at one of the most advanced universities in known space. She promised to stay in contact and to return home for visits whenever possible. The response came back faster than she expected. Her grandmother's voice, transmitted across hundreds of light years, carried a mixture of worry and pride. "Little Scale daughter, you have always been braver than the rest of us. If these humans have shown you kindness, then perhaps the old stories are wrong. Learn what you can, but remember where you come from. And if they ever threaten you, remind them that Catherians have claws of their own." Zara laughed at her grandmother's protective instincts. The old female had raised her after her parents died in a mining accident, filling her childhood with stories of ancient heroes and dire warnings about the dangers that lurked among the stars. Now those same protective instincts were pushing her granddaughter toward the greatest danger of all, or perhaps toward something that was not dangerous at all, as the human ship prepared to leave Federation space and head toward the Sol system. Zara stood at the observation deck watching the stars wheel slowly past. She was leaving behind everything familiar and traveling to a world that had been described as hell itself. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she was moving toward something instead of running away from it. Marcus joined her at the window, following her gaze toward the distant stars. "Having regrets?" he asked. "No," Zara replied. "Just thinking about how many lies I believed without questioning them. Makes me wonder what other lies are out there waiting to be discovered." "That's the right attitude for a scientist," Marcus said with approval. "Question everything, test your assumptions, and never be afraid to admit when you're wrong." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching hyperspace form around the ship as they entered the final leg of their journey to Earth. Somewhere ahead lay a world of monsters and legends, of truth and revelation. Zara could hardly wait to see it. Earth rose before them like a blue and white jewel against the black of space. Zara pressed her face to the observation window, unable to believe what she was seeing. The legendary Death World looked peaceful, almost inviting, with swirling clouds and vast oceans that caught and reflected the light of its yellow star. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Most people say that when they see it for the first time," Marcus said, joining her at the window. "It's hard to believe something so lovely could produce such terrible monsters." But he was smiling as he said it, and Zara realized he was making a joke. The humans seemed to find humor in their fearsome reputation, as if they understood the irony better than anyone else. The ship's communication system crackled to life. All passengers were receiving final approach clearance from Earth Traffic Control. Welcome to the Sol System, humanity's home among the stars. As they descended through the atmosphere, Zara saw sprawling cities that stretched from horizon to horizon, but they were unlike anything she had expected. Instead of the industrial wastelands described in hegemony reports, she saw vast parks and gardens woven throughout the urban areas. Rivers ran clean and blue through the city centers, and the air was so clear she could see for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. "Where are all the weapons?" she asked, confused. The story said every human city was a fortress designed for war. Captain Torres laughed from his position at the helm. "We learned a long time ago that the best defense is not needing one. When people have good lives, comfortable homes, and meaningful work, they don't usually want to fight wars." The spaceport where they landed was enormous but surprisingly peaceful. Humans moved through the facility with the easy confidence of people who felt safe in their own world. Children played in designated areas while their parents handled travel arrangements. Elderly humans sat on benches feeding birds that had somehow learned to coexist with advanced technology. "Those are actual animals," Zara said in amazement. "I thought Earth's wildlife was too dangerous for cities." "Some of it is," Dr. Chen admitted. "But most of our native species are just trying to live their lives, same as us. We've learned to share the planet instead of trying to dominate it." As they walked through the spaceport, Zara noticed that she was drawing curious but friendly looks from the humans around them. Several approached to welcome her to Earth, offering directions or assistance with a warmth that seemed completely genuine. None of them acted like the conquering warriors of legend. "They're not afraid of you," she observed to Marcus. "Should they be?" he replied with that same gentle smile that had first made her question everything she thought she knew about humans. The journey to Luna University took them on a transport that climbed steadily into the sky before breaking free of Earth's atmosphere entirely. Through the viewport, Zara watched as Earth's moon grew larger, revealing itself to be covered with domed cities and research facilities that gleamed like crystals in the sunlight. "Luna was our first home away from home," Torres explained. "When we started reaching for the stars, this was where we learned to live in space. Now it's become one of the galaxy's premier centers for scientific research." The university itself was breathtaking. Massive transparent domes covered entire valleys, creating environments where students from dozens of different worlds could study and live in comfort. The xenobiology department was housed in a complex that recreated atmospheric conditions from across the galaxy, allowing researchers to study life forms in their natural environments. Professor Sarah Martinez, the department head, met them at the entrance to the main research facility. She was a small woman with kind eyes and hands that moved constantly as she spoke, painting pictures in the air to illustrate her explanations. "Zara, welcome to Luna University," she said warmly. "We're thrilled to have you join our program. Your background with Catherian biotechnology will be invaluable to our current research projects." As they toured the facilities, Zara saw wonders that made her head spin. Humans working alongside researchers from dozens of other species, all focused on understanding the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. In one laboratory, a team was studying the symbiotic relationships between different alien ecosystems. In another, researchers were developing new medical treatments based on biological processes discovered in the Outer Rim territories. "This is what we do," Professor Martinez explained as they watched a human graduate student collaborating with a Altarian researcher. "We learn from each other. Every species that has evolved in this galaxy has developed unique solutions to the challenges of survival. By studying and sharing that knowledge, we all become stronger." That evening, Zara found herself in a small restaurant near the university campus, sharing a meal with Marcus and several other humans. The food was simple but delicious, and the conversation ranged from scientific theories to funny stories about life on different worlds. "I have to ask," Zara said during a lull in the conversation, "why do you think the hegemony is so afraid of humans? I mean, really afraid, not just the political reasons." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "Because we represent possibility," he said finally. "For 300 years, the hegemony has maintained order by convincing everyone that conflict is inevitable, that some species are naturally superior to others, that the strong must rule the weak to prevent chaos. And then humans come along, added Dr. Chen, proving that cooperation works better than domination, that strength can be used to protect instead of conquer, that the best way to win a war is to prevent it from starting in the first place. We're living proof that their entire system is unnecessary, Torres continued, that there's a better way to organize galactic civilization, and that terrifies them more than any weapon we could build. Over the following weeks, Zara threw herself into her studies with an enthusiasm that surprised even her. The xenobiology program was more challenging than anything she had experienced in the outer colonies, but it was also more rewarding. She learned about evolutionary processes that spanned millions of years, genetic adaptations that allowed life to flourish in impossible environments, and symbiotic relationships that created entirely new forms of consciousness. But more than that, she learned about hope. The humans around her genuinely believed that understanding could replace fear, that cooperation could triumph over competition, that the galaxy's incredible diversity was a source of strength rather than conflict. 3 months into her program, she received an unexpected message from home. Her grandmother's face appeared on the communication screen, but instead of her usual worried expression, the old Cytherian was smiling. "Little Scale, daughter? Your letters have caused quite a stir in our colony. The things you describe about humans and their world, about cooperation between species and learning instead of conquering. Some of the younger adults are asking questions about the old stories." "What kind of questions, grandmother?" "Whether perhaps we have been afraid of the wrong things. Whether the real monsters might be those who profit from keeping us afraid." Zara felt her heart skip a beat. "That could be dangerous, grandmother. The hegemony doesn't like questions." "Perhaps it's time they learned that Cytherians don't like lies," her grandmother replied with a fierce grin. "Your cousin Tam has applied to join next year's exchange program. She wants to study what you're studying, to see what you've seen." After the communication ended, Zara sat in her dormitory room and thought about the ripple effects of her journey. One young Cytherian questioning the stories about human monsters, one family beginning to doubt the official version of galactic history, one small colony starting to ask uncomfortable questions about the powers that ruled their lives. She thought about Director Koss's words about human deception and manipulation. Perhaps he had been right after all, just not in the way he intended. The humans were changing the galaxy, one smile at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one rescued passenger at a time. They were conquering through compassion, winning hearts instead of destroying worlds, and building an empire of hope that no weapon could defeat. As she drifted off to sleep, Zara smiled at the irony. The legends had spoken of human monsters, and they had been absolutely right. The humans were monsters, just not the kind anyone had expected. They were monsters who chose mercy over vengeance, understanding over ignorance, and love over fear. And they were exactly the kind of monsters the galaxy needed.